Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to let the room fill up. We are happy to have you here. Thank you to those of you joining. We are happy to have you. We're giving it a little moment as the room fills up. All right, well, let's get started. I am Emily Badix. I am the interim director at the Longmore Institute and co-director at the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center. Before we dive in, let's go over some access notes. If you would like more personalized captions from stream text, you can access them at dcc.page/captions. Today's program is a Zoom webinar, so only our panelists can turn their videos on and provide audio. We've turned off audience chat, but we do still want you to participate in this program and use it as a communal space. So we ask that you do that in the Q&A space. Just treat it like it's a chat room. We are pivoting today's program, as you hopefully know, and so that leaves even more time for you to ask questions or share thoughts and ideas with our panelists today. So please don't hesitate. You can get tech support as needed in the Q&A space, or alternatively, you can send an email to access@disabilityculturalcenter.org, which is a place we'll try to monitor as well during the event. So let's dive in. In case you didn't receive the notification, this is not care work under fascism. Again, this is not care work under fascism. We really apologize for any disappointment that you were probably hoping to hear that very important topic right now. We were not able to meet the access needs for our panelists and the access needs that they deserve. So we are postponing that program until it can be done right. We are extremely grateful that Maria Palacio and Rosemary McDonnell-Horita were willing to join us today so we could still hold a space with a different topic, because we know there's a lot of folks where if you've got the time blocked off and you're looking for disability community, especially at this moment in time, you're going to count on that. So we appreciate that they were able to jump in so we could still spend some time with you all this afternoon. So we've asked them to talk about arts and activism in this moment in time. We're being casual. We've invited them to just be in conversation and chat with each other. They're going to chat with you as they answer your questions that come in along the way. And we're gonna have a great conversation. So thank you so much. I will pass it to you both. Ask you to just start introducing yourself to our community, what things have been like for you lately, what work you've been doing lately. And I'll ask Maria to tap in first on that.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Well, almost night for me. Wow, these are indeed heavy times. And, the space for us to get together is absolutely necessary. I am super grateful for the opportunity to be here sharing space with Rosemary. Hi, Rosemary. You know already that I adore you. Again, my name is Maria Palacios. My pronouncer, she, her. I am with Since Invalid. We are a disability justice, movement building, performance art organization. And as Emily already explained, originally we had a talk about care work and fascism, which unfortunately we cannot accommodate tonight, but we are excited to be in conversation together with Rosemary and you all, just offering up the space. My access needs today are I am in a space that might yield some interruptions of dogs and other things. If that shall happen, I will let you know and mute myself for a second. We encourage everyone to just be in your space. This is a super casual, comfortable conversation. We want to just be at home in our bodies, at home in our spaces. And thank you all again for joining us. Um, and I want to invite Rosemary. Rosemary, to introduce yourself, my love. Hey.
Hi, Maria. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon, evening with us. My name is Rosemary. I use she, her pronouns. I am a light-skinned Japanese American woman. I had short brown wavy hair, and I'm wearing a new t-shirt that I'm excited to share since we're talking about art and activism. I am currently the impact producer for a new documentary that just came out. It's on Hulu and it's called Patrice the Movie. And so I'm wearing Patrice the Movie merch with her art on my shirt. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that later in our program, but really excited to see so many people in this space. And I know we all know in DJ spaces that we can plan for things and then shit happens. And we have to be really flexible. But I think disabled people are one of the most flexible, creative, badass people. And I love Maria so much. I see her often on Zoom, but we're in a space where we can't really just chat one on one. So I'm selfishly really excited to just have an opportunity to chat with Maria one on one and get to know what is happening in your world and how you're feeling, but also have some questions that I want to ask you since we have this space and you've been doing art and activism for a really long time. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for letting me be in conversation with you.
Oh my God, dude, shut up. You make me feel like a celebrity. I am so honored and so excited. I'm like, when I learned that we were going to be occupying this space, you and I together, I was like, shit, yeah, like you said, we often get to hang out. I'm so super grateful for that. But that usually like never ever happens like a one-on-one, and it's no secret that, I'm pretty vain and I love the attention and company of other people. So for us to have this conversation and have people watching us, I'm like, wow, okay, wait, thank you for making me feel like a superstar indeed. What can I say? This is so awesome. And I love the t-shirt, by the way. We definitely have to talk about the film.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to talk about the film.
Yeah, because you know what? I'm going to be fully honest. I have not seen it, but I know what it's about. And it is definitely something that affects so many disabled people, and yeah, we'll get into that, eventually. I don't want to like, I just all of a sudden take over out of excitement. And also interpreters, please feel free to tell me to slow down and get a hold of my excitement, because we know people who communicate with spoken language tend to become super excited and get carried away, and go. So I'm one of those people. And slow me down. You will not hurt my feelings. We all need to be reminded of language justice more. As we know, live in a world that even within disabled spaces, ableism affects us, audism affects us, and we tend to just live within our own privileged spaces. Just because we're disabled and we're oppressed doesn't mean we don't enjoy privilege of some type. And owning up to that is part of how we occupy the space as disabled people. So if we're going too fast, please stop us. Yeah. So where do we start? I know that we could like go on and just keep talking, but I want us to like, yeah, talk to me.
Well, yeah, I guess my first question for you is like, how how did you get involved with Sins? I know that they're based in the Bay Area, but you live in Texas. So how did you get in community? And that's my first question. How did you find out about Sins?
Oh my gosh, I love going back into memory land when it comes to, especially when it comes to sins, because it was back in 2006 when they had just had their first show. And back in the day, back in 2006, I remember as an artist being in MySpace. Do you all remember MySpace? You know, like it was like for me, like the very first dive into what social media became, you know, it was like new to all of us. But I remember being in awe of how many disabled people were there on MySpace. You know, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. You know, because until social media happened, the way that disabled people had been organizing had been extremely, extremely, you know, grassroots to the level like, you know, that without technology, the technology we enjoy now, meeting up disabled people was, you know, the old fashioned way. It was hard building community, and yet we had been doing it. We have been doing this underground work since forever. You know, it's no secret. So anyway, MySpace, and I remember that I was using my MySpace platform to promote my writing at the time, you know. Um, and all of a sudden I got this email, this message on MySpace from Leroy Moore, co-founder of of Sense and Valid, along with Patty Byrne. And the message was short that simply said, "Lady, your work is right up our alley. Audition." You know, and I completely like it went over my head, like, yeah, whatever. You know, I didn't take him seriously at all. But thank goodness, Leroy was a very persistent person, and he did not give up. And he kept insisting, you know, please submit your work, submit your work. And back then it was not as easy. Like, it's hard to believe that 18 years, 20 years ago, we didn't have the ability to just do it. We didn't even have selfies back then. If you think about it, you know, we've kind of so comfortable with technology now, right? That we kind of take for granted what we are able to do. And but back then, I remember that all I had was a tiny little camera, like those 8 millimeters that with the tiny tapes, you know. And I remember going into my garden and recording 3 poems. And I told Roy, I said, dude, this is all I got. If, you know, I don't know if I have to mail you the whole tape. He'd say, I don't care. We'll take care of it. You know, just audition and just to shut him up, really, because I was not expecting anything. Like I didn't know. You know how all of us sometimes we don't recognize our own greatness, our own ability to like do shit. You know, well, that was me back then, like 18 years ago, whatever. And so just because he insisted so much, I sent the tape, and 3 months later, um, I got like a message saying you got in, and I was like, what? And the rest is history. I've been with since then. My first show was in 2007, and I have been in every show since then. And then some, because there have been some shows that were not as publicized. Like for example, in 2013, we had like a speakeasy show that was like not part of like the big huge show. And we've always like on the side done representation at colleges and other events, you know, bringing partial shows with like maybe two performers, you know. So I have the luxury and the privilege of having been part of Sense and Valid as a performer um, since the very beginning, and also part of that movement, because we know that art and artistic advocacy is ever flowing. It doesn't just get stagnated, you know, it doesn't just get stuck in something. If we're part of a movement, it's called movement for a reason. You know, we keep moving forward and evolving and forever changing. And like to me, it boggles my mind so much now, for example, to go back in my head, rewinding that tape and realizing that as empowered as I find myself and feel, 20 years ago, I was one of the people who was preaching people first language, for crying out loud. Many of us Crips were, because ableism is so brutal that we were doing what was the thing at the time, you know, we didn't know better. And then if we rewind back from there another 15, 20 years, I was calling myself handicapped, for fucking Christ's sake. You know, many of us were, you know, so the way that we normalize oppression, the way that we normalize ableism, the way that we normalize oppressive language and we internalize shit, it's real. You know, so when we talk about artistic advocacy, it's a constant flowing thing. We grow, we change, and it's so beautiful to be able to witness our own growth, because art is something that allows us to do that. You know, we as artists, whether we're writers or singers or dancers, we have the ability to go back and look 20 years into our work and say, holy shit, I was writing that, you know? So hopefully my answer wasn't a 20-minute answer, but you asked.
No, that's perfect. And I love the reflection that you had, and I think that for me, SINS is the origin of disability justice, but it also is so intertwined with art in a really beautiful way. And you can't talk about SINS without talking about the artists and the ways that the artists have been a part of the movement in so many other spaces. And as I've grown in community and learned about other people and their stories, a lot of us are artists because we have to navigate an ableist world, because
Mhm.
we have to be creative and think outside of the box. And we haven't been given permission to think of ourselves as anything besides disabled. And I really loved what you said about language changing too, because so much technology has changed, but also our language has changed. Um, I remember when I first, I'm saying this and I know that this is going to get recorded. And so I'm hesitant, but my deep dark secret is my first screen name for when I had AOL was back when we had AOL was handicapped girl, GURL. And I was 11, I think, at the time. And I thought that I was like claiming my identity and I was so proud. And then a person in my community who had the same disability as me was like, girl, what are you doing? You can't have that, can't be your screen name. That can't be your identity. So I was like, what's wrong with handicap? That's what everyone calls me. I didn't have language for disability. I didn't have permission to use something other than what I'd learned from like special education teachers. And I didn't have a disability community elder or mentor to say, this is what we say, this is what we don't say. And so it makes me feel at home and at ease that I'm not the only one who had to change and relearn my language.
I know. And you know what? I'm sorry, I have like people in the background and ignore it. The funny thing is like when I hear you say that story, the way that you spell girl is so progressive and so feminist. That's what cracks me up. It's like, the overlapping of oppressions, it can be so seen here. Ableism, you know, with I mean, gender identity and how they overlap and how in one part of your identity you are so liberal, you're so feminist, and another part you're so fucking oppressed. And then we didn't know it. And when we talk about oppression, that overlap is so interesting because that's what intersectionality is about, right? No, I'm okay. I'm in a meeting. I'm sorry. Okay. Um, so yeah, it is absolutely fascinating when we start like realizing those things. Um, and also how we grow. It's like when we are younger, we don't recognize oppression for what it is because especially I claim that as someone who grew up disabled because I have talked to other disabled, the Crips, who acquired the disability later in life. And it's like, I call us the lifers, you know, because we grew up disabled. We know life as Crips. We know, and at the same time, there's another side of us that doesn't know because this is all we've known, right? When I talked to the Crips who became disabled later, they still remember walking or seeing or whatever non-disableness they had. That there's a certain level of grieving and mourning for that loss that is not part of our Crip identity when you grow up disabled, you know? So hold on, here, have something. Yeah, sorry. Grab it. So anyway, it is fascinating, and when we connect all of that, you said something also interesting, which is like I can also relate to is like how many of us don't realize we're artists because art in itself has also been so stained by ableism, so we have been denied access to everything, including art, which is one reason why Sins Invalid was born, right? Originally we were born as an art project. Patty and Leroy never imagined that it would evolve to what it has become. Why? Because in the internalized ableism that oppresses us so much made us believe that this would be like a one-time thing where only a few disabled people would show up. Never do they imagine that it would turn into a major movement. And here we are, a major movement. But back to what you said about many of us don't realize we're artists. It's funny because I've always claimed my personal art as like I'm a writer and that's it, right? I ignore the fact that I can sing a little, that I can dance a little, that I can draw a little. So here's the interesting thing. When we refuse to call ourselves something that we don't want to claim out of fear of like overclaiming or whatever, right? Like a few years ago, I started drawing like little stick people, right? And little stick people, but the message was about ableism, that my little stick people were talking about ableism. And I realized, shit, I am an artist when people started calling me an artist. Because to me, in my, whatever you want to call it, narrow mind as far as art is concerned, to me, an artist had to be someone who can actually draw real noses and fingers with fingernails and perfect bodies. I mean, this is how ableism fucks up with you, right? Uh, and so people made me realize that my little sketch stick people cartoons are art, because art is not about what other people call it. It's about what we claim. It's about when we decide to call ourselves that. It's so fascinating. Somebody, another disabled person recently asked me, Maria, what did you have to do to call yourself a professional presenter? And I said, nothing. I just called myself one and started fucking presenting. I mean, there's no like professional presenter university where you get like this. No, we all have life experience that is worthy of attention, that deserves to be shared, that we all have survival and experience and so much value as human beings, and especially as disabled people. Crips, more than anybody, have survival stories that would leave the non-disabled world in awe of how the fuck we survived so much, right? So much. So yeah, all of us. I really, I like to argue with anybody who tells me that they're not an artist, because I really truly believe that the only difference between us who are artists and those who are not artists is the fact that they haven't claimed themselves. They haven't heard their own calling, because art is more about drawing and singing and dancing. Art is about expressing ourselves outside the fucking box.
Yeah,
Right?
a
Thank you.
100%. I'm like seeing these parallels between the claiming of being an artist and the act of doing that, and also the act of claiming yourself as disabled. And there are people that I know who are born disabled, and they, someone in the Q&A wrote, I've been disabled my whole life, but I didn't get recognized until much later in life. And until you see that it's something that you can claim, that you are proud of, or that you want to associate yourself with, you don't have to have all of your art in a gallery to be an artist, or to win a prize that says you are artist of the year. And I do art for myself, and sometimes journaling my feelings doesn't get to it. Sometimes I have to paint my feelings out. Sometimes writing poetry with the Reality Poets helps me process things in a different way. And it's just a different, like you said, a different way of expressing yourself, your experiences, your life. And hopefully there are people out in the world who see your art and experience it, and they say, yeah, I resonate with that. That hits really hard. That is exactly how I feel. But maybe they just didn't have the language for it. So I'm thankful for all of the artists in our community who have outwardly claimed that they are an artist and shared their art with the world, because it takes a lot of bravery, and I'm not doing that yet, but I commend all the people who do, for sure.
I know for sure. It is. Oh God, art is so powerful and so diverse. So very diverse. I think of all the disabled people. I mean, first of all, we are very fortunate. You know, there are societies that do not allow art to be a way of expressing, feelings or oppression. And it's almost scary to be where we are right now because it feels like we're at the verge of losing that, you know? Um, it's, I also feel like, art has always historically been a way of yelling out the shit that we cannot say to the world. That's why it's so revolutionary, you know? Um, if we think, of I always like going back, like interpreting art, for example, right? We look at art and the people who are not art knowledgeable or able to appreciate art but they may not realize how, for example, you look at Frida Kahlo's paintings, right? And how she painted her reality about being a disabled woman during a time when being disabled was not as, I'm not saying that it's easy now, but I dare say that it was way harder back then, you know, and the way that art liberates, it's another connection, because when we talk about liberation and freedom, art is a way that allows us to find that way to free ourselves from the oppression, from the ability to say the things that we want to say, through art. It is so powerful. Bear with me for a minute. I have to mute myself to yell. Okay.
While Maria is taking a quick break, I wanted to read something that we got in the Q&A. Fiona says, "This is why the rise of AI art and art in quotes and writing worries me so much in this moment. They're all looking for ways to not have to deal with the political reality of artists and writers and how subversive we can be with all of our creations." And Mia also says, "I find that creating zines is a powerful way to communicate thoughts I wouldn't be able to convey in ASL with hearing people, regardless of whether they're able-bodied or disabled in other ways." Thank you both for sharing. This idea of, you know, using art to communicate what you want to convey, sometimes words don't do justice. Sometimes it's an emotion, it's a feeling, and maybe it's a color or a photo that really gets the experience and the feeling across. And I've seen some really great art come out in the last, few years about, you know, Black disabled lives matter, for example, was art that was created by Jen White Johnson and in partnership with, the contingency in Washington, D.C. But so many people got to use that art at their rallies and wear it as a sign of protest on their shirts. And I think I think about Frida and how a lot of her art was talking about her chronic pain and how it felt to be so isolated, and why she was the main subject of all of her art was because she was processing and grieving and trying to understand her body and how it fits into society through her art. But then we see this like AI pop art version of Frida's art, which is exactly opposite. She was a communist. Like Frida would have hated all of the art that is of her face all over the world, and the way that it's been commodified, and the way that her disability was completely erased. But if you look at any of her photos, you see her cast, you see the scars, you see the grief of miscarrying and not being in touch with her body and not being embodied. And just, it just blows my mind that we can look at the same piece of art and take away such different understandings of it. And going back to like the interpretation of it, for me as a disabled person seeing Frida's art, I'm like, that looks like my body. I recognize that. I know exactly what that feels like in my body. And then someone else posts it and they're like, it's Frida's birthday. Happy birthday, Frida. We love you. And I'm like, how did we look at that same thing and get such different stories from it? And I worry about like the advancement of technology and AI of art and what that means for artists, and how the fuck are we gonna fight against technology when they're trying to erase us, and the people who are making this technology
Mm-hmm.
are not disabled. They don't have our experiences. They are worlds apart from our experiences, and yet they're the ones programming the world that we're supposed to create with. No, that's not for me. Absolutely not.
I know it is so. It is really scary, actually. You know, I mean, first of all, I think that our narrative is already being told through a non-disabled lens. You know, already we don't need AI for that to fucking happen. You know, we're already being represented. Our stories are being told by non-disabled actors in movies. Um, we don't get invited really to sit at the table for real. You know, even though, I mean, it's amazing how invisible we already are, and now, I mean, there's two sides to every coin, right? There's, of course, people who are going to be like defending AI as like the ultimate tool of independence, the ultimate tool of, and you know, yes, there's like benefits to everything, but for the most part, I fear our identities and our voices and our stories being further stolen, further taken from us, and being more thrown into further invisibility because somebody else is not able to speak for us, you know? So I think that as disabled people, we need to continue just taking charge of any instrument that we're able to drive on our own with our voices, and keep doing the art that we do, and keep confronting ableism, because ableism is at the root of every oppression that we face, no exception. You know, it doesn't matter what intersection we're looking at. It could be racism, it could be gender identity, it can be, I mean, anything. I always like to remind people that there is no intersection of life without disabled people, like at all. Like at all. You know, I don't understand how the fuck that flies over people's heads. Like, what part of that don't you understand? How is it so difficult to comprehend that eventually everyone will be fucking disabled? It's not a curse, but that's how they see it, you know? So it is just fascinating.
I
Um,
did I did want to read a couple pieces in the Q&A. People were saying, Kat said art is a safer way to express anger, 100%. And Fiona said in the UK, our arch Tory nightmare Prime Minister Theresa May once wore a bracelet with Frida's face on it, and disabled women here were not having it. Again, with the commodification of Frida's art. And someone anonymous wrote, Rosemary, I loved Patrice so much. I wonder how Patrice is doing in the current climate and how you're doing promoting this film as art, given how different our culture feels since it was first released.
Please talk a
Curious,
little about the film. Yes, please, please, please.
yeah.
First, let me say something real quick. I have not seen the film, but I know what it's about. And I am fully aware that marriage inequality is
Mhm.
reality for many disabled people, and it is something that most activism is not even touching. It's
Yep.
something that people ignore so much because of ableism. First of all, most disabled people are expected to have any kind of intimacy, relationship, marriage, sex, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an issue that has been thrown to the bottom of the barrel. Uh,
Mhm.
it's something that affects so many disabled people. So anyway, please do talk about the film.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about the film for lots of different reasons. So the the film Patrice is about a woman named Patrice. She lives in New Jersey, and she is an artist. She also is an athlete with Special Olympics. I don't know how she does all of the things that she does, but she is incredible. And the film is a documentary. It's streaming on Hulu, so you can, if anyone wants to watch it on Hulu, or has a subscription, you can watch it. But it is told from her perspective, and I was really hesitant at first because Crip Camp was on Netflix, and that was really great to have that level of support from like a big media platform. But I was hesitant, like, okay, what does Hulu want with this story, and how have they morphed it to work for them? But they really didn't. They let Patrice tell her story 100%, and the documentary is done really beautifully. It talks about her wanting to marry her boyfriend of 30 plus years, but that they both find out that they can't get married because of the marriage penalty, which is baked into Social Security. And they would be, if they got married legally, they would be at risk of losing their Social Security benefits, but also their Medicaid benefits. I'm gonna wait for the interpreter to switch. Okay. So the documentary is talking about Patrice's story, but also there is reenactments of different parts of her life that's done through like a kids theater kind of show. And Patrice plays herself through all of the different timelines of her story. But the thing that's really cool is she created the set design. She like drew all of the set designs, she wrote the script, and there's a whole cast of actually disabled children who are in this film, and they play lots of different characters. But it was incredible to see a film that is told by a Black disabled woman who also is in like empowering other people to advocate for themselves, and we see her fight for marriage equality. But it also is just a really great film talking about what it's like to live as a disabled person on benefits, living in poverty, forced poverty by our government because they fucking hate disabled people, and the way that she has to navigate the asset limits, and the way that has she has a wheelchair accessible van and it breaks down, and then she has to take time off of work, and that means that she has to then find another way to get around to get to her job if she doesn't have a wheelchair accessible van. And so all of these things are like so relatable to any disabled person that I've encountered, but it's done and supported by this huge platform. And so I have been supporting the Impact campaign, and the film came out at the end of September last year. And we got a huge response from media, the Social Security Administration, like the commissioner of Social Security Administration, watched the film and wrote a statement saying, yeah, we know that this is outdated. We know that the asset limit is way too low, but we at Social Security can't do anything until Congress does something and changes it. So it was, Social Security like mic dropping and saying, hey, Congress, it's up to you to make this happen. But with all of the changes that have happened since January and the new administration, most of our focus for the impact campaign has completely had to pivot. I would love to tell our funders that we are hosting events to talk about marriage and equality, but none of that matters if we don't have fucking Social Security. If Patrice doesn't have Social Security, if she doesn't have Medicaid, if she doesn't have housing, none of the other shit matters. And so that, while the story talks about marriage inequality and how important that is, and Maria, what you were saying about disabled people not being looked at as wanting to have romantic relationships, not being portrayed as being sexy or desired, all of that is like very much real and baked into the assumption, right? And when Social Security was written and when the marriage penalty was written, disabled people, this was before Olmsted, disabled people were still living in institutions. Disabled people are still currently in 2025 living in institutions. And they didn't expect disabled people to live in the community. They didn't expect disabled people to be getting married. Maybe if they thought about it, it would be a disabled person marrying another disabled person, but that was like the extent of it. And so the law is, as we know, outdated. And as much as I want to talk about that, we need to save Medicaid first. We need to prioritize making sure that Patrice has access to healthcare so that she can get the medications that she needs so that she can have her job. And so that has been a lot of what we've been doing with our impact campaign is people watch the film, their first reaction and response is, I had no idea that this was that disabled people couldn't get married. I had no clue that this was our reality, and what can I do about it? And so I'm like, great, so glad you're interested now in disabled people and disability rights. And these are people who have no connection to disability, right? They just saw a new documentary on Hulu and they were moved. And so I'm like, great, glad you care. Now I need you to go call your Congress people and tell them to save Medicaid. I need you to look at the ways that your governor or your attorney general is trying to erase Section 504. These are the things that I need you to be paying attention to right now. And I have had this really unique role in facilitating and running impact campaigns. I started with Crip Camp back in 2020. And I think that that was a really great way for me to start understanding art as a form of activism and not just putting my body on the line in the traditional activism way, and knowing that there is room and space for people to tell their stories through film, and how watching a movie about like 504, telling people to watch Crip Camp is so much easier than me having to tell them all of the history of disability rights. I can just say, go watch Crip Camp. When you're done with that, come back and talk to me, and then we can strategize and figure out how you can help us. And I felt that way when I worked on the film Fire Through Dry Grass, which was on PBS, and talking about 4 young people, Black and brown men, who are artists, rappers, musicians, producers, all living in a nursing home and almost died during the COVID lockdown. And using that film to create a movement called Nursing Home Lives Matter. And so all of these documentary films are helping change the narrative around disability. It's a way to bring people into our lives without putting the energy every single time. Because every time I present, every time I facilitate, it takes my energy away from me. And it's draining to have to convince people all the time that disabled lives are worth caring about. And so instead, telling them to watch a film is so much easier. I'm like, great, go watch this movie and then we'll talk. And It's a great way for non-disabled people to be a part of the conversation. It's a great tool to educate people who are new to disability in education spaces. It's a great way to use existing platforms of art and think about how you can tell your story. So all of these all of these things are a part of how I've been doing my work within film art and activism. And Patrice designed this shirt. She's continuing to do her art because it is what grounds her and keeps her central nervous system not constantly in fight or flight. But a lot of my time right now for the impact campaign is making sure that Patrice is okay and checking in on my disabled friends and making sure that we have what we need. And so to answer to a very long answer to the question, no, Patrice is not okay. None of us are okay right now, but we are surviving and doing what we can and remembering what we individually have control over. And her art is one of the ways that she kind of regains control over her reality. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about the film. I really hope that some folks watch it. And Maria, if you don't have Hulu, let me know. I can hook you up with a link.
Yay. I'm not sure if I do, but I do want to watch it. So please do hook me up with the link. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing all that information about this wonderful film. It brings me to realize yet again how everything is so connected, how we cannot just say, oh, let's focus on advocating for marriage inequality or marriage equality, while the whole system that holds everything up for our survival is like being threatened to come down tumbling over us and leave us with nothing, so you're absolutely right, and this is just a reminder to all of us how everything is connected. And also, we were talking about how we evolve and how we change, and how art, how just looking at, if we want to like take a peek, what you just said about like it's easier to tell people watch Crip Camp or watch this film than having to like spend so much of our time advocating, educating, painting a picture over and over and over. Because as disabled people, we know that that's what we have to do all the time. All the time. It is fucking exhausting. First, we have to like keep educating, and it gets to a point for me, and I know that it is the same for all my disabled friends, that that exhaustion of like what we have to choose our battles constantly. Do we like let this one go, or do I get angry and say no, this is ableist, you don't call me that, or no, I mean, the battles are so continuous and so nonstop, the microaggressions, that a lot of times it becomes easier to just draw a cartoon or write a poem or sing a song and say, fuck it, I'm putting it out there. And if people receive it, fine. And if not, it'll be out there. And that's the power of art, that once we create it and once we put it out there, it helped us survive, because it helped us express that pain, that oppression, that fear, that anger, whatever that we are feeling. It's such a conductor of advocacy automatically, so if people want to, like, if any of us, we want to know Crip history in itself, we don't have to look far. We can like look and take a peek into the art of other disabled people and what their art is telling us, because these are times of extra oppression. I can tell you, and I know it's true for many of us. Oh God, this is like the hardest that the most scared I've been in my entire life, politically, politically,
Thank Thank you for saying that, because have I just keep feeling like, God, it's so bad. Is it as bad as it's ever been, or am I just extra sensitive? Am I paying too much attention? And like, but thank you for saying that. That's really validating.
Thank you. You're repeating it and you're saying it back is validating to me too, because, and it's interesting. I was talking to somebody, and interesting how people, privilege is such a fascinating, whatever the fuck you want to call it, whatever. Um, I was talking to somebody, this person is someone I love, somebody who loves me, you know, and this person is white. And I was telling her, you know, about, you know, my fears and everything that's going on. And her response was like, well, I have not been on top of the news because it's so depressing. And, you know, and I'm like, wow, then that made me like realize extra much how privilege works. You know, what a slap on the face for someone who loves me to have the ability to just say, oh, well, I'm not dealing with it because I don't have to. You know, we cannot. If you don't have to deal with this fear, then please be there for other people. Be there for other people. I have a cheerleader in the background going, amen to what I'm saying. So yes, amen, honey, amen. Um, anyway, so yes, it's so important for us to use our power, you know, and most people, no, the non-disabled world thinks we, as disabled people, we don't have power, but we do. We do have so much power, and we need to utilize it now. Um, it's so important for the disabled people who can be out there representing and fighting and showing up to do so, because those of us who can't, who live in danger because of our, you know, either color of our skin or political beliefs or gender identity or legal status, I mean, everybody, nobody's really safe at all. At all. And people who may think they are safe because they're white, fucking think twice, because there's something else that's going to come and bite you in the ass, okay? You know, so white privilege is only white privilege until you become disabled or old, right? You know,
Yep.
so let's just realize that in this day and age, you know, it's not, everything is connected, and that's what disability justice reminds us of. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that liberation is not like only a certain group of people get liberated. It's collective liberation, and how we go about that. It's it's the key moving forward. You know, it's really hard right now, especially a lot
Yeah.
of people living in fear. And I know from experience that art is one way of saving each other,
Mm-hmm.
being ourselves, saving our emotional survival. You know, it is hard, and we have to keep holding on to the things that do sustain us, and art does sustain us. And art moves along with the movement, and it evolves. You know, it's just like we were talking about from the very beginning of this conversation, and going back to Sense and Valid, you know, the very first performances and how we started. Everything back then was about sex and sexuality. Why? Because at the time it was like the most invisible obvious space that we were being left out, you know, bodies and our sexual identity, like we didn't have a space for that. And also Patty and I like to laugh, you know, about like 20 years ago, how we were both like younger. We were in our, like, I was 40, she was 39, and we were like adventurous horny people, you know. We're like, we have the right to fuck, you know. I mean, literally, you know, she would like say that. She would like laugh. We'd laugh about how much we loved through our bodies back then, which is so normal. We all have the right to love through our bodies, to have that passion, to be fed and to feed other bodies with our sexuality, with our hunger, with our beauty, with our experience. But we fucking get denied that. Even now, you know, but when Since started, that was our mission, and our purpose was like to let the world know of our hunger, and how we sustain ourselves, and how we grow, and how we fucking how we, you know, all this reality. So we have evolved. 20 years later, we are about surviving ableism, right? You know, we are in a different space, but at the same time, we must recognize that just because like me and Patty are older 20 years later, there's still younger Crips who still need access to that. That's why our history is so important. And the shit that we have done all throughout our entire history, you know, like you were talking about defending 504, nothing is more important right now than defending our survival from the ground up. From the ground up, because our Crip tree of life is being threatened, you know,
It
to
is.
pulled out from roots and all. You know, we cannot allow that to happen. And there are many ways of doing that. Sorry. I'm
So
sorry.
there's a couple of really good questions in the Q&A. Can we
Sure, yeah.
One of them is from Emily, and she was asking, Maria, your performance at the most recent Sins show was incredible. I especially love the piece with all the canned food about the privilege in prepping, and yet we know Crips want to prep because we can't count on the system if shit hits the fan, which it is. Can you share more about how you developed that piece and how you feel about it today?
Absolutely. The piece that you're referring to is about hunger. It's about food insecurity, and the name of it is Emergency Food. And basically, it talks about what you just mentioned, Rosemary, about food insecurity, about how disabled people don't have the ability to prepare when it comes to food, how a lot of times we end up eating our emergency food, and how, I don't mention this in the piece, but the way that the piece developed was like because exactly that. It made me realize I had just attended an emergency preparedness workshop in which, we get told the same shit that we always get told. Have enough water for up to 3 days per person, food for up to 3 months, and then you count per person. Then I started thinking to myself, I have a household of like 8 people. Then when you think of like 3 gallons per person by 8, okay, and then food, same thing by 8. And then you realize that you have to replace that food and water every fucking 6 months or shit. Okay. And then I'm like, how the fuck do you do that? I mean, I'm still confused about how you do that. And the people who say that they're actually prepared for an emergency, how? If you're disabled, if you live on a fixed income, if you have food stamps, if you run out of food and you eat I mean, there's so many realities. So the development of that particular piece was from personal experience, from having survived disasters as a disabled person, and having gone without food when all our food gets spoiled, or when you don't receive benefits. I mean, there's so much to consider. That piece was very emotional for me, and oddly enough, I didn't originally wrote it for the show. I wrote it 3 years ago because it was like some kind of like artist call from the Red Cross to speak about emergency preparedness. And then Patty had said, how about if you write a piece, a partial, like a start of the progress of a piece to submit to them, and then they'll be like, we were like, the show was in preparation for the show 3 years ago. Believe it took us 4 years to get to the show, believe it or not, for so many reasons. So I wrote this piece like a couple of years ago for that other purpose, and then I finished the whole piece, and it was very emotional for me to do that piece, and even emotional performing it. And in full disclosure, I'm going to tell the truth, I fucked up during the performance. That piece affected me, and I
Yeah,
missed piece 3 nights in a row. And it hurts me as a performer because there was a part in which I had to talk about how the world wants disabled people dead, and I just fell off that train, and I couldn't. I had to, like, when you'll see the performance, probably people who attended and didn't know would not know. They probably thought it was part of the piece, like that I kind of like lost it and looked down and go, oh, in my mind, I'm what the fuck. But the real reason is because the piece was so emotional to me. It touched me at a personal level. When you have gone hungry, especially during a disaster, and it was like, but yeah, that piece is so, so powerful. And you know what? The funny thing, I did not know that there was like food thing hanging over me, like during the stage thing, because I didn't know that until I saw the photo. I was like, Patty's a genius. Like, wait till she stage it. I had no idea. So thank you for asking about that particular piece. Food insecurity is a reality for so many marginalized people, for so many disabled people, and especially right now. Um, there's a lot of undocumented people are going to be left out without. I mean, yeah, yeah, it's a super
yeah,
super painful, and
yeah. Thank you for sharing. I witnessed the piece and it was magnificent.
thank you. If I could do it over, believe me, I would like do it over. But even then, it was powerful.
I'm just waiting for interpreters to switch. I'm not seeing April's video.
I'll take over. Want me to do it?
Are you seeing April's video? No. Okay.
This is Emily. We're seeing it as a black box and it was frozen and then we lost April. So we can just pause a second here, see if we can
Okay.
get an interpreter up. Or we have some extra hearing interpreters. So if we're having a problem, we can get, if there's a hearing interpreter up for being on screen for a little bit to give our last interpreter a break. Can see how it goes.
Thank you.
We have somebody willing.
Yeah, it's Warren. I'm on.
Warren, is that correct that you're up for being on? Thank you for hopping in. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
We're just pausing to give them a moment until we get the sign from Warren that he's ready to begin interpreting.
You can go ahead, but if you could keep your eye on April's video, I think we're going to try to get her going in just a moment, okay? Thank you.
Great. So there's another question in the Q&A. We're waiting. April's video is up but frozen.
Hooray for technology.
I can see April's video. I can see her moving.
Okay. I'm still seeing a black screen.
April's saying, I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to restart.
That's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Great. I love Crips. I love Crip spaces so much. Like other spaces are like will freak out because their event isn't going exactly as planned, but we're like, sure, we'll wait. It's fine. We've got a team of people. So thank you, Warren, for being willing to be on camera while we wait for April. One question that I wanted to highlight that came up, and I wonder, Maria, if you would be open to talking about it. Shayna says, I wonder if either of you have thoughts about the capitalist drive to promote art these days via social media platforms. It's one thing to create, and it's another thing to spend your energy on publicity, not even just community building. Do you have thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, capitalism is so brutal that it's going to want to commercialize anything, anything. I mean, it's not surprising. It's upsetting, but not surprising. I see it all the time. And the sad part about it is that it takes away from people like disabled artists who may not have the ability to or the resources to promote massively like that. Um, it's it's hard. I don't really know. I don't really know how to answer that. Rosemary, what do you have to say about that? Help me with this one because I don't have much experience with that level of like, promotion or whatever. I guess
Yeah.
I insulate myself in my own crip world, sometimes too.
Yeah. This is Rosemary. I feel like it depends on what you want your art to do. Is it for yourself? Is it for other people? How do you want to share that with the world? I spend a lot of time thinking about like a lot of my job requires me to be very much on the internet and run social media platforms. And it is not the part of my job that brings me joy. but I know that it is important so that people can see the work that is out there and share it with other people. So I like go back and forth between, you know, whether you want to commodify your art and how quote unquote valuable it is. I think of other artists who I followed and only know because of their presence on social media, and I wouldn't have found them otherwise. Um, and so, yeah, I think it is really challenging to be in that fine line of like not going in the capitalist route, and also we live under capitalism, and so like how are we gonna escape that? I'm seeing April now. Should we bring her back into the space? Good. You don't have to apologize.
Sorry about that.
No worries. This is, again, we love crypt time. So, Maria, we've got like, it's 5:10. We've got maybe 20 minutes left. What I just feel in this moment, in this space, I feel really good. Like, I feel so connected to community. I feel happy for the first time I felt today. I'm feeling held. I'm feeling less despair than I have felt most of the week. But what is bringing you joy right now? How are you feeling?
Thank you for that question. That's a good question because I've been like so like most of us, so like under the political weather, just like really bummed out. Like it's hard. But there is joy, and disabled joy is beautiful. Disabled joy, and I love calling it that, disabled joy, crip joy, because again, every time that we recognize crip joy, we're doing something anti-ableist. Really, literally, because the world thinks that we're so fucking miserable all the time, that we're just like moping and sad that we're disabled, that we don't laugh about anything, you know. But the truth is that there are a lot of laughable moments, even ableism can be fucking hilarious. Um, so many things bring me joy. I just want to like bring up a moment of like laughter to me, because it's like laughter brings me joy. Laughing about dumb shit brings me joy. Laughter is so powerful. The other day I was out and about. There's construction in my neighborhood, right? And I saw a sign that said men at work, this orange sign. And I'm like, well, fuck that. I want to change it to women at work, so one of my plan was to vandalize the sign, right? And so I got this marker, and I'm trying to mind my own business, vandalizing peacefully. And I guess ableism is going to fucking show up at the most inconvenient moment. And so this non-disabled person sees me what I'm doing, but he's concerned, like, ma'am, are you okay? Because I'm bending over with my crooked body and my scoliosis and my ass up in the air, like riding on the floor. And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I got busted," you know. And I'm like, "I'm okay. No, don't. I'm okay." I'm yelling, and well, he walks over to me and he sees what I'm doing. I'm like, "You didn't see anything," So that was to me like a funny moment. Like, here I am, in my crib body, minding my own business, but. Even then, ableism is gonna fucking follow me. He thought I was falling out of my chair or whatever. Like, I'm like, dude, you didn't see anything. So there's a crib joy. Crib joy keeps me going, holding on to the moments that are laughable to us because we know that they are laughable, despite all the shit that we're going through. So yeah, I get joy from nature. Nature is amazing. I get joy from my kid, and then childhood is like so fucking fast. Watch them grow up. So yeah, there's a lot of joy. A lot of disabled joy.
I
Life is beautiful.
love I love that. I am just like imagining in my brain you out here doing some rogue vandalism shit. Just uh you are my dream Oh my God, like I call it wheelchair magic because I use a wheelchair, but like I can get I'm I'm recorded right now, but I know some people who have done some shit and have gotten away with it because of wheelchair magic. And people don't expect it from us, you know? They're like,
Oh, they think we're fucking angels. We're not gonna break anything. We're gonna like,
yeah,
oh, yeah,
we're
so
perfect
fucking
little
angels.
angels. We would never break the rule,
We
right?
don't.
But we're out here.
Yeah, we already have that get out of hell free card because
Yep.
we're disabled. We already lived the worst fucking shit just because we're disabled. So we get that oh poor thing, get away with it. Shh.
Yep. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
100%.
Yeah, that's
And
the part of ableism that's fucking hilarious, right? Really,
yes,
really.
yes.
Because Crips, we party hard. We do the same shit and then some.
And then some is right. Yes. Yeah, 100%. And I think about some of the like street artists that I know who are disabled and they get away with fuck shit all the time because they're just like, oh, for me, I'm disabled. Don't look at me. And you use the erasure and the invisibilization of being disabled to fuck shit up. And I love it. And I yeah, I dream of more Crips doing whatever we need to do to make our point get across. And
To be
um
revolutionary badasses that we are. The
exactly.
world needs to see us for who we really are. And we have art and joy and magic of all kinds and survival skills out of the wazoo. Like, well, shit, we're badasses.
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
was feeling really frustrated, and not even frustrated. I was mortified when I read that they want to get rid of the ACL and get rid of all of this funding that goes directly to independent living centers, goes directly to developmental disability councils, all of these things. And this administration is not even pretending or hiding behind anything. Everyone is out here telling on themselves out loud, airing out their shit without shame. And I was devastated thinking about the lack of funding that independent living centers are going to have. And I had a moment where I was like, how are we going to make it? How is this happening? Like, we fought for so long to get independent living centers, to get people moved out of nursing homes, to
Mhm.
have people be employed by the government and then be fired from said job. And then I watched the new documentary series that Jim Lebrecht helped put together with PBS. It's called Change, Not Charity. I think I'll have to triple check it. But it was similar to Crip Camp, talking about 504, talking about Judy Human and all of the work that she did. And I was like, there wasn't independent living centers back then. There were no curb cuts.
Mhm.
Disabled people are the ones who came up with that. Our government has not ever given us anything that we didn't have to fight for.
Ever.
Ever. And they're not going to. And I don't think that we should be under the guise that all of a sudden they're going to care about disabled people. We care about ourselves, and we are the ones who come up with the solution to ableism. We are the ones who created independent living centers. We are the ones who smashed curb cuts into existence. We are the ones who have created spaces like this that are as fully accessible as we can be to the most number of people that we can reach, because disabled people made that happen. And
Mhm.
so if Judy Heumann and all those folks could dream back when none of these things existed, when all of our friends were institutionalized, when no one could get a job, when no one was living in their own home. And now, 50 years later, we are seeing all of these things disappear. But I'm like, okay, what are we going to dream up next then? And how do I help dream up what that is going to look like? Because we know that Social Security and Medicaid are broken. They're not working. They keep disabled people in poverty. They don't actually meet out all of our needs. So if they're going to dismantle that, how can we make it better and actually make it serve us as a community and be what we want it to be? And it feels ginormous to dream that way, but I have to, because if I spend any more time thinking about the ways that our world is crumbling around us, I'm not going to have room for dreaming. And that's the energy that I want to put out into the world. And so maybe the dreaming is art, maybe the dreaming is being in nature, maybe it's being in spaces like this, but it's not just going to happen overnight. And we're all going to have to be a part of that together. And I just want to remind all of us that we are the solution. We are not the problem.
Indeed. I love that. We are the solution. That is so true. That is so true. And it's interesting because like the people who are solving our problems, the non-disabled politicians and shit, all they do is keep asking more from us. Like, stop asking disabled people to do more when we've already done everything we can.
Amen.
And that's the truth. Structural oppression, structural ableism, everything is going to have to come down before we're able to reconstruct our lives. And I'm 59 years old. I don't know if I'm going to be part of this change. I know, yes, I
No,
am.
you're not.
I am. I turned 60 in 10 months, and I'm like, baby, 60 is the new 40.
Damn.
Yeah. So, it's like when we think about the Crip ancestors, and I just want my message to the younger Crips is a message of love. And I want all of you, the younger generation, to dare to be your Crip ancestors' wildest dreams. Let's be our ancestors' wildest dreams. All of us as Crips have something amazing and beautiful to pass on. Crip legacy of survival. I mean, all the shit that we have done, and we're not gonna just sit still while the world ends around us. We're gonna keep doing what we are doing to survive because we already know we've been through some shit already. This may be new to other people, but it's not new to us. We are used to having to build and rebuild and survive and come in with a fucking machete, not to chop up the ableist oppression and all the thorns. I mean, just to get to the door. It is nothing new. It's exhausting, but it's not new. We know what to do. We already know how to survive, and we will survive. And we deserve to survive. That's my constant message to disabled people. Ableism wants to convince us that we are not worthy. Ableism wants us to believe that we deserve to just die and not have a life. And that is so not true.
No.
Our disabled lives do fucking matter. And they matter so much to each other and to the world. The world needs us. The world
Yep.
needs our wisdom, the experience of our survival. We have so many answers that the non-disabled future needs.
Yep. God, I love you so much.
I love you too.
I'm gonna, is there anything that you want to say in closing? I feel like we both just preached, but
All right. I feel that.
You did vote.
Oh my
well,
God.
I am just so
Yes.
thankful that we
Preaching.
finally got to have this conversation. Many, many more to come. Thank you for all who have spent the afternoon with us and for participating. The Q&A is popping off. There's just so much happening, and I can't keep track of it, but I know that you all are engaging and resonating with what we're saying and what other folks are contributing. Thank you to the DCC for hosting this space and having us. And I'm going to pass it back to Emily.
Oh, thank you too. I want to share a backstory, which is that when I was brainstorming how to use this space, I remembered this moment where I had just seen the Sins show and I was excited to go tell Maria how much it had left me just all the feels. And right before I got to her, Rosemary got to her first. And they shared the most beautiful hug, and it was just the most lovely moment. And so I thought, well, I think those two have some chemistry. And boy, did this confirm it today. Like, that was just so fabulous. And thank you both so much. I really, really appreciate it. I also want to say that one thing that was shared in the chat, I do want to give a shout out to Kat. Someone named Kat was with us today and said they didn't have any folks to be around and it's their birthday. And so I'm so grateful, Kat, that you spent your birthday with us. Thank you for being with us. That makes us feel really lovely and excited to get to have a space on someone's birthday. I want to thank our interpreters. We had AV and April on screen, and behind screen we had Ebony, Warren, and Kate. Thank you all. Thanks to our captioner, Lisa. This program was presented to you by the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center, which is a collaboration led by Elsie and Lily Cox, Haven of Hope, with support from the Longmore Institute on Disability at San Francisco State University. It's all made possible thanks to financial contributions from the City of San Francisco's Human Service Agencies, Department of Disability and Aging Services. We're going to send a survey afterwards if you want to share a little bit about your thoughts from today. We've got lots more programs coming your way this month. We have a program on Together Time, Rage and Grief. If you just want to be in a space where you get to just take a couple minutes on screen to share the stuff that is heavy and, that like a space where it's okay to let it out. Bianca will be facilitating that space for us. We have a two-part care work and domestic liberation series coming our way that's with an organization called Hand in Hand, and we're very excited about that. And we have so much more. So you can sign up at dcc.page/links for our newsletter and access all of our calendar and events. Thank you all for being here with us today. And one final thank you to our presenters. That was so great.